Okay, we're going to get started. I am told we have a quorum.
Mr. Mayor, how are you?
We thought, in honor of this being the darkest Friday of the year, because it changes next week, it'll be lighter at this time. We would start early and get you up really early this morning.
You just wanted us to experience traffic.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, appreciate that.
We really wanted you to experience all the traffic on Highway 94.
The 15 works like a charm. No problem.
Well, that's what investment does.
That's right.
Okay. Let me first call this meeting to order. Today is Friday the 3rd, thank goodness. And our first item on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Second. I have a motion. And a second by Mayor Voss and Council President Cole. Please cast your votes.
It was Jones.
Oh, was it Jones?
Yes, yes, sir.
That sounded feminine.
Well, she could take it.
Okay.
That was cute.
That is approved on a unanimous vote. Do you have any public comment requests? Okay. Catherine Rhodes. About 2 minutes.
Right here. Governors, and what I want to talk about today is the San Diego Housing Commission. At 9 o'clock today, they're going to talk about putting $7 million to the 3 TIFs, which is great news. The reason for that was when the TIFs were shut down in late 2014, within 2 years, the number of homeless people that died on the streets doubled. It's directly related to the lack of housing, of course. And then, of course, the San Diego Housing Commission always talks about how they don't really have any money. The Union Tribune did a story about how they're basically hoarding funds that can be used immediately for homeless, but they pretend they have no money. For example, and just for an example of how the Housing Commission works, their budget for the Affordable Housing Fund, fiscal year 2017 last year, their budget was $45 million, but they only used $4 million. Plus they got additional money, so there was actually $64 million available for them to use. So out of the $64 million, they spent $4 million, which is 6%, and they hoarded the other 94%, pretending that they had to somehow. There were some type of reasons. And one of the big things that I think is huge is the Standard & Poor's issue rating report for the San Diego Housing Commission with their AA rating of April 10th, 2017, where it states that San Diego Housing Commission has a vulnerable financial performance compared to similarly rated peers. And the main reason of that is their high liquidity ratio, which is 9.1, which is super high. They have tons of money, cash on hand. And then also their low debt ratios. And one of the other things that San Diego Housing Commission tries to say is that they give out loans so that they have to have this money in their reserves. That's not true. They're actually missing restricted with unrestricted funds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Okay. Next item on our agenda, that's all, that concludes public testimony. Open items, the review of the draft board agendas. Victoria will give us our reports on those.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this starts on page 8 of your iPad. This is the draft board agenda for November 17th. Please note that this is the 3rd Friday versus the 4th Friday of the month. Your first item is the approval of meeting minutes, followed by public comments, and your standard item number 3, actions from Policy Advisory Committee. Under the consent calendar, we have the item 4, which is the approval of proposed solicitations and contracts. At this time, we're not aware of any, but we'll hold this spot open. Item number 5 is your standard report of meetings and events attended on behalf of SANDAG, followed by the report summarizing delegated actions taken by the executive director. Item number 7 is your overview of developments of the financial markets and quarterly finance report, followed by item 8, which is the quarterly status report on transportation projects July through September 2017. Under the chair's report, we have a report from the nominating committee on the slate of board of directors officers for 2018. This will be a report out on the recommendation from the nominating committee. Item number 10 under reports is a hearing of necessity. We would like to discuss property interests related to the downtown stopover and multi-use facility. Item number 11 is the 2018 State Transportation Improvement Program. This is coming up from the Transportation Committee, and we'll be asking for an approve on this item. Item number 12 is the 2018 State Cap and Trade Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, and these are the proposed project submittals for these two programs. That concludes the November 17th agenda. Are there any questions?
Questions? None?
The next one is the review of the December 1st draft board policy agenda. The first item we have under reports is an update on Senate Bill 1, the proposed SANDAG project submittal. So we'll be bringing forward to you guys a slate of projects that we would like to submit for in consideration for the state SB1 funds. In addition, we would like to add an item to the agenda related to the executive director recruitment at this time. We hope that the subcommittee will have a firm selected for the board's consideration and approval. So with that, that concludes the update of the two agendas.
Any questions? Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Cast your votes. Oh, I'm sorry. Chat an item. Catherine, this on the board agenda.
Yes.
Okay, keep it on the board agenda, please.
Yes. So, item number 10 on the board agenda for November 17th is the hearing regarding the downtown bus stopover and multi-use facility. Previously, there was an active fault trending toward the site, and you guys were going to do your due diligence review, which would be your fault investigation. So I was wondering what was the result of the fault investigation. Did you find the faults? Did you not find the faults? And then did you do a third-party review of the fault investigation? The people that did your third-party review for the Mid-Coast Trolley fault investigations, I would recommend that you guys use them for this bus stopover project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. This is not on the item, it's on, we put it on the agenda, and it is on the agenda. Okay. Then those two proposed agendas are approved unanimously of those members present, with the exception of South County. Okay, next, we have the update on the greenhouse gas reduction target setting process. This is going to give us a staff report.
Okay, good morning.
Morning. We are awake.
Okay, and so, well,
for yourself.
let me try and tell you why I'm here. First of all, let me start out with an apology that the report for this item was just posted last night, and that reflects that there's been a lot of activity leading up to a hearing that the California Air Resources Board has scheduled for November 16th, which is one day before your next board meeting. Given that this activity was happening up to and including yesterday, a decision was made to come here to the executive committee because your agenda is very full today on the board meeting, and so we wanted to come here and give you an update and ask for some flexibility in terms of the recommendation we're making to the California Air Resources Board. So that's why I'm here this morning.
And that meeting is later this month.
Yeah, it's the 16th, and the next board meeting is the 17th, and so that's why we wanted to come here to the executive committee to seek your direction on how to present at the November 16th meeting. Just real briefly, what I'm going to cover is last March and April we presented to the board, to the full board, on the GHG reduction targets for our 2019 regional plan update that we're working on. We've worked extensively with the other three large metro agencies in LA, Sacramento, and the Bay Area, and also through our association, the Association of Councils of Governments that we work with on a statewide basis, and we came up with a statewide recommendation. All four agencies recommended 18% per capita reduction based on a 2005 base year. And so, of course, California Air Resources Board is the agency responsible for setting the targets. All we're talking about here is what we are going to recommend to them. They make the decision, we don't. California Air Resources Board, or CARB, took all of our recommendations, and their staff issued a draft and final report for the November 16 meeting. When the draft report was submitted by CARB, all of the 4 major agencies had concerns about the report, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And based on all of the discussions with the other agencies, we are seeking flexibility to increase our target recommendation from 18 to up to 19%. Let's talk about that. Just to back up a little bit, we are required, our last 2 plans have been done under Senate Bill 375, which requires MPOs to pursue the development of sustainable community strategy, which is just a fancy way of saying that we need to coordinate land use and transportation within our plan, and that we have to, the California Air Resources Board sets greenhouse gas per capita targets that we have to build our plans to meet. So last May, we made that recommendation of the one consistent target of 18%, and attachment 1 to your report is was the letter, May 1st letter from all 4 of the major agencies to the California Air Resources Board. It's a very large attachment because it includes the board reports from each of our 4 agencies, but it shows the amount of effort that went into setting and recommending the target. We all did stress tests to look at different scenarios. We did a lot of quantitative work that we presented to the California Air Resources Board. In June, CARB issued a draft report after reviewing everything that was submitted, and all 4 of our agencies at our association had major concerns with their draft report, and those are attachments 2 and 3 to your report, our SANDAG letter of comments, and CalCog's letter. Some of the concerns that we expressed was that we felt like the CARB staff was focusing on qualitative assessments versus the quantitative assessments we did for the stress tests. We felt like they weren't recognizing the fact that there's a lack of funding and tools to be able to achieve the kinds of targets they were suggesting. There was definitely a lack of recognition about how ambitious our existing plans are in terms of the greenhouse gas reduction achievement that all 4 agencies have been getting. There are some other technical issues that we put into the letter regarding the model that CARB uses and some of the changes to that model. On a statewide basis, there was concern that any pricing that would happen over time would not be allowed for the regional agencies to take credit for, and pricing was the one stress test area where it did show that it moved the needle the most. And there was also a concern that the CARB staff was overestimating the value of SB1 in terms of being able to contribute towards greenhouse gas reductions, not recognizing the fact that over 2/3 of that funding goes to just simply fixing the existing system as opposed to building new facilities. In October, CARB, after many meetings, because of the letters that we received, we met face-to-face and so forth, CARB basically issued the final report with virtually no changes from the draft report that they put out in June. And so CARB, when it comes to SANDAG, they are recommending that our target should be set at 3% over our last plan achievement, which for us would be 21%, which is fully 3 percentage points higher than what we recommended at 18. We are definitely concerned that we can achieve that level. If we don't achieve the target level in our 2019 plan, it has funding implications for us. If we don't have a valid sustainable community strategy, there are funding pots at the state level that are dependent on us having a valid SCS. And so based on the discussions that we've had up to and including yesterday, SCAG went to their regional, what do they call it, their regional council. I'm trying to remember, they call it their regional council, and they got a recommendation back that we believe that going up to 19% may be a compromise that we can work through with CARB. And so therefore, we're asking today to modify the recommendation that was made by the board back in April, which was 18%, to revise that up to 19%. So there's a whole lot there. There's a whole lot more information that's attached to your report. I can answer any questions, but with that, I'm just going to read the recommendation before you today. The Executive Committee is asked to provide direction on next steps related to a revised target for the San Diego region, including 1, the approval of a revision of the 2035 per capita greenhouse gas emission reduction target recommendation for the San Diego region from 18% to up to 19%. And 2, authorization for the Executive Director to work with the other statewide regional agencies in developing a target recommendation for submittal to the California Air Resources Board pursuant to Senate Bill 375 for its use in the GHG emission reduction target setting process. The last thing I'll just as a reminder, we don't make the decision on the target. California Air Resources Board does. What we're here today is just seeking your direction and approval to have a little bit more flexibility in what we recommend at the California Air Resources Board. With that, I turn back to the California Air.
Yeah, will SCAG be at that meeting November 16th?
Yeah, the November 16th, the executive directors for all 4 of the major MPOs are planning to be there.
And for the benefit of some of us who use the term pricing, everybody, I think, has a different meaning for that. Can you share with us how you're using pricing?
When we did the stress tests back last spring, we purposely looked at things that were overly ambitious, just to see what it would take to be able to move the needle in terms of greenhouse gas reductions. And the pricing that we assumed when we did those stress tests were basically a vehicle miles traveled fee that would be based on that vehicles would pay based on per mile driven, an assumed amount, and that took the amount of pricing that was required to move the needle by 5 or 6 percentage points was pretty substantial. There's a lot of issues regarding pricing going on. The California Transportation Commission has done a pilot project to look at it because everyone's concerned that, as more and more zero-emission vehicles get on the road, fewer vehicles are going to be paying gas tax, and how do you replace the gas tax? The federal government's been looking at it for a number of years, and so the fact is, certainly pricing does moderate the amount that people drive if you reach certain levels. So the fact is, if pricing is going to happen on a statewide basis, we would want to include that in our analysis looking out to 2035 as to what effect it would have on greenhouse gases. But the CARB staff has indicated that anything that's done on a statewide level wouldn't count towards our targets because it's a state program versus a regional program. And pricing on a regional level is kind of hard. I mean, we do it in terms of things like our I-15 express lanes and the 125, which is a toll road, but we do it on a corridor by corridor basis. But the pricing that we assumed in the stress test and the other agencies did was more universal pricing.
Okay. Any increases in the gas price that might assist in reducing the greenhouse gas? They don't want to give you credit for that.
Depending on how the pricing would be collected. If it was a state policy, their position is that would not be something the regional agencies would be able to take into account for their own target reduction.
Okay. Just one final comment. Somebody I know well on the Air Resources Board would recommend that we give them flexibility to go to 19%. Especially if Los Angeles / SCAG is going to be requesting 19%, I think it would behoove us to, even though it's a little stretch, and I know that.
It's 19 versus 23.
21.
20. The current recommendation from the CARB staff for the SCAG region would be 21, as well as for San Diego 21.
Is that a reliable source that you have that you know on the board?
No.
Okay.
No. But you pick the best that you can.
So going from 18 to 19%, would our region be more challenged to achieve that extra point versus LA? Or they all have to reduce it from their existing threshold?
Well, I guess the way I'd respond, that's a very good question, and the way I'd respond to it is we all felt like 18% was very ambitious and that we were going to all have to work very hard to get to 18. Obviously, going 1 percentage point more would make it a bit harder. I think we feel, and again, collectively talking amongst the agencies, that 19% is doable, very, very ambitious, but 21% was something that we really were very concerned that we would be able to.
So it's going to put us at a more disadvantage because it's more challenging for us to achieve that extra point than LA. Therefore, we'll put our funding at more risk.
No, I wouldn't say it's any. I wouldn't say it's any harder for us to achieve the 19 than Los Angeles. I think we both have very similar concerns with how difficult it's going to be to achieve the level. You know, when you look at the SCAG region, you know, the LA County, you know, just passed another sales tax measure. They're doing a lot of investment, but LA County is just one small part of the SCAG region. They also have Riverside, San Bernardino, Imperial, Ventura, Orange. Did I leave anybody out? I think, and so they definitely have major concerns, you know, and they're going to be very challenged to get their entire region to get to that 19%.
Part of this is at least our analysis based on, our current analysis based on the modeling is we've done 18%. And so I think, you know, they don't want to make this too easy for everybody and they want to push us a little bit to see if we can do better. But there's a big difference. It's not easy to, you know, just snap your fingers and it's going to happen.
I think if we widen the 78, we will reach 20, 21, 22% like this, you know?
You don't have a problem with that. Chairman Cruz, 94. I'm hearing about the 94. It's all, there were people in the elevator, it's all they were talking about, so Highway 94.
You're going to try the 5 South. But anyway, question I have is, okay, the whole idea of the 18, 21%, when CARB is setting this model of 21%, is that sort of scientifically arrived at, or is this more the dartboard? You know, they hit a number, they decide that's a number.
I would just refer back to the comments that we made to their draft report, both us and CalCog, and we were concerned that they were referring to a lot of kind of qualitative research that shows differences in driving patterns and so forth and so on. Whereas we felt very strongly that we did a lot of, you know, modeling and stress testing, and so that was our primary concern. And so we believe that we put more rigor into the stress test in establishing these targets than the CARB staff had done in putting their report together. Their position was, look, we want to see improvement over the last plans, which is again frustrating for us because we feel like the plans that we've put out are extremely ambitious and they're well into the future. And to just simply say, well, you can do 3 percentage points better than that is a little frustrating because it's like, okay, well, how are we going to do that? And back last spring, we did spend some time talking about there are some things changing demographically and so forth that are actually pushing us in the opposite direction. So just staying at the level that we've been able to achieve in the last plan is harder to do because of some of these forces that are actually pushing us the other way. And again, I think that's another thing that we feel like wasn't fully appreciated by the CARB staff.
We got to move along here. Jack Shu. Jack, you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, and I'll just make 3 quick points. I don't know if it's because of my ethnicity or because I had more rights this week, but I think 21% is an achievable goal, and we should go for it, if not more. Greenhouse gas emissions, let's not talk about methodology. Let's just talk about greenhouse gas emissions, what it means to our community, what it means to California and the world. Here in San Diego, in this region, is where the whole idea of greenhouse gas emissions, the killing curve chart was created. We should be leaders, if not in California, in the world, in setting our goals high in achieving them. Greenhouse gas emissions, climate change is a threat to life as we know it on this planet. And we have to show that leadership that we can make these goals and do it well. It's doable. The second point is the co-benefits to our economy, to our quality of life, and just what we can do here in San Diego. You know, besides greenhouse gas emissions, the pollutants that affects us, the co-benefits are tremendous. We could reduce asthma, we could reduce cancer for so many people. We now know that 80%, the chance of someone having a child having an asthma attack is up to 80% higher if they live within half a mile of a freeway. Think of those co-benefits if we set these goals high. Now, we can work on how we can get there, but you know, I expect my kids to at least try to get a B, if not an A. Why are we trying to get a D here? Or maybe a C? Let's set that goal high. Let's try to go for the 21%, if not 22%. And certainly 19% we can do it. 1% we could do it. So let's please set these goals high and send that message back to CARB. Let's tell CARB they're not doing good enough, that we could do better.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, that concludes the public testimony. What you would like is a recommendation, the authority to make a recommendation to the board.
Right. Yeah, the recommendation is to approve the revision from 18 to up to 19% and to give the executive director
I'll make that motion.
the authority to work with the
Okay.
other agencies.
Yep. Motion by Mayor Morrison and a second by Mayor Voss. There's no further discussion. Please cast your votes. Working.
Spam it.
There we go. Hey!
Okay,
Finally got the move right.
voting is closed. And that's approved unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on then. Thank you, Muggs. We'll move on to item 5, program budget year-end report. Sandy, and Andre, and Jim. And that's it. Okay, the three of you will give us the staff report here. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. So we are here today to summarize results of the program budget for fiscal year 2017. The program budget includes several components, including the overall work program, which is the OWP, which is focused on regional mobility and sustainability planning and modeling, the regional operations, which includes your toll facilities, motorist aid, intelligent transportation system, and ARGIS, and the capital program, which includes the transit early action program and other regional capital improvements, and lastly, the administration budget. So overall, we delivered on a vast majority of the projects included in the amended budget. So as shown in Table 1 of the report, the approved budget was $971 million, which was then amended down to $881 million, of which we had $705 million in actual expenditures. Highlights are shown in the report for all the different projects, but Sandy will now talk about some of the OWP highlights and operations highlights, and then Jim will take some of the capital highlights. Sandy?
Thank you. In modeling and research, since the board approved the 7-point plan in February of this year, the technical services team worked to completing the tasks in this plan. They identified the root cause of the forecasting problem and have been working at improving internal processes to improve the accuracy, quality, and transparency of the data and analytics program. Ray Major, director of the department, is going to cover the 7-point plan in more detail at the board meeting later today. In preparation of the upcoming regional plan and regional housing needs assessment process, the modeling staff made significant updates to the travel model, also known as the activity-based model. One of the most significant updates to the model will be the inclusion of the data collected this summer as part of the Household Travel Behavior Survey. The Criminal Justice Division within the Technical Services Department served as the research partner for 13 different efforts with law enforcement agencies. The studies provided valuable insights on a wide range of topics, including reducing recidivism, human trafficking, juvenile and gang crime, as well as mental health issues. In sustainable development, we continued implementation of the San Diego Forward Regional Plan and its sustainable community strategy, including the regional complete street strategy and performance management requirements that focus on safety measures and targets. We continued award-winning efforts on habitat conservation, focusing on the coastal wetland restoration as part of the North Coast Corridor. This includes a large-scale coastal wetlands restoration to increase the ecological health of the lagoons, infrastructure improvements to increase tidal flow, and endowments for long-term caretaking of the lagoons to maintain their connection to the ocean. In energy and climate planning, we worked with the cities to produce energy efficiency upgrades with climate action plans. In sustainable mobility, we completed work on several grant-funded projects, placing emphasis on new technologies, including working with the cities on installation of electric vehicle charging stations as part of the regional electric vehicle plan, and a regional transit signal priority study to identify locations to implement transit signal priority on local bus routes. We have a successful grant proposal to develop a military multimodal access strategy to address traffic congestion at key military base and port access points. In communication, we started work on several SANDAC websites, including shiftsandiego.com that provides information on the transportation projects happening in the Golden Triangle area, and keepsandiegomoving.com, which includes the story map highlighting all the transit projects in the region. In regional operations, ARGIS launched a regional training program to more than 40 public safety agencies and enhanced the ARGIS mobile program for more than 30 participating law enforcement agencies. On I-15 express lanes and fast-track toll lanes, we saw a 6% increase in revenue over last year. And on SR-125 toll road, we had a 7% increase in trips and a 6.5% increase in revenue. They awarded a contract for the implementation of a new centralized back office system and began a process to refinance the existing loans, which we expect to close later this month with debt service savings of approximately $70 million. And now Jim with the capital program highlights.
Thanks, Amy. You know, your capital program continues to be very, very robust. This is just the capital program part out of your program budget. It's 116 projects, multi-year budget of $8.1 billion. I am the envy of my counterparts across the country. Everybody, if you take out LA and New York City, this region is the envy of almost everybody else in the nation as far as transportation goes. If you look on page 5 of your report, you can see some of the highlights of the capital program. And I just want to highlight some of those highlights. You know, the first bullet is the downtown rapid stations. If you ever have the opportunity to walk down to Broadway, right outside of our office, between 4th and 5th, you can see an example of what one of those up-to-date modern stations looks like for our rapid service. You know, it's got these big TV screens that tell you everything you'd ever want to know. All the traveler information you could ever want is available because that technology has gotten that cheap where you can put the TV screen in. And it's also a nice shelter. And those downtown stations service the I-15 Rapid that comes in from North County. It also services the Mid-City Rapid that comes down from San Diego State and through the heart of the city of San Diego. And it will service South Bay Rapid it's under construction now. The third bullet down is we completed the construction of State Route 76, the second of 3 lockbox projects. And so that was completed. Some of you were at the ribbon cutting. I think that was last spring. Last lockbox project is Midcoast. Skip down to the second from the bottom bullet, Bus Operations Center. Something that doesn't impact the public that much, but is certainly critical for necessary of the services for the public. We opened up a new bus maintenance facility in El Cajon for MTS. It matches the one that we opened up about 2 years ago in Chula Vista for MTS, the service South County. And the last bullet, that's the highlight of our year and certainly where most of our work is going. We got last fall, we got our full funding grant agreement from the federal government and we broke ground on Midcoast. Anybody that drives up the I-5 corridor or drives through UCSD can see all the work that's going on, the dirt that's flying, the drainage that's going in, the bridges that are being built for the Midcoast project. And it's not just Midcoast, but it's also the concurrent projects for double tracking at the south end of the project, near under Route 52 and heading south, and then double track and a new bridge, heavy rail bridge over the San Diego River. Combined, that corridor has $1.2 billion worth of construction under contract right now. Totally unprecedented. If you go to page 6, just highlight a couple of others. The top bullet under there is South Bay Rapid. We call that South Bay BRT. All 4 projects now are under construction, so all the last of the 4 has broken ground to complete the South Bay Rapid, the bus rapid transit line through the city of Chula Vista that will connect on to 805 and head north. So they're all under construction. You can see the next few bullets are all the multiple bike jobs that are now headed out to the field, getting final environmental clearance and design and things like that. The second to last bullet under the Capitol is I-5. So if you drive I-5, you see the extension of the HOV lanes under construction. A lot of the dirt is flying along near the San Alejo Lagoon, and then its sister transit project is also under construction, double tracking the rail, the Los San corridor across the San Alejo Lagoon. And the last bullet there is a project that we're all proud of. It's the Gilman Drive Bridge over I-5. You know, that's a public partnership because on that job we worked with Caltrans and the UC San Diego to build a new bridge over I-5. If you drive up there and you wonder what that curving wood structure is, in another year or so, it will no longer be wood, it'll be concrete. And it'll be a beautiful looking bridge for the first time connecting East Campus and West Campus via Gilman Drive, something the university has been trying to do since the 1980s. And so we finally got there. And I also forgot to mention a public-private partnership success that we had last Friday. Last Friday, you might have seen on the news that the region opened a brand new transit center up at Westfield, a UTC mall. Public-private partnership between the city of San Diego, Sandag, and Westfield Shopping Mall, where we all contributed, and that project was open just in the nick of time for the new portions of the mall that opened just a few days. Well, I guess it opened just a few days before. So that's the highlights of the capital program. But I also want to just turn your attention back to a table 1, which is on page 3 of your report, an attachment 1 anyway. I mean, you see the table 1 says the amended budget to actual, and you look down at the capital program. The capital program seems to be driving the entire Sandag number down. You think, well, geez, does that mean we're not delivering? What does that mean? So let's just take the Sandag capital program at 81.2%. It says elsewhere in your report that 8.2% of the capital program is held in reserve for contingency, and that's just a summation of each of the contingency on each project. So when you add that to the 81.2, you're about up to 90. 90 is still not quite as where we would want to be because we're now on more, and you hear Jose Nuncio talk about we're on a pay-as-you-go basis, and so therefore, because of that, we need to get those cash flows down better. This isn't budget, this is cash flow. So what happens is, right now, we're working with staff and our project managers, we're trying to predict our construction contractors' cash flow, how much work they're going to be doing on a given month. We're trying to predict that for fiscal year 19 as part of your fiscal year 19 budget that you'll be seeing this winter and spring. That can be difficult and it's far from inaccurate, but it's far from accurate sometimes, but what we try to do is we try to nail it as close as we can. This particular year was driven by 2 projects that you're well aware of. Midcoast, when those budgets were set and those cash flows were predicted the prior year, we thought we were going to get Midcoast about 6 months sooner than we did, the full funding grant agreement. We did not. So that impacts when the contractor could start, his burn rate, and how much money he could spend. The same thing for the Caltrans line item on I-5. This is their first construction manager general contractor, CMGC contract. They had to negotiate, they needed to value engineer, and they needed to get that price down. Even though it went up, they needed to get it down to as low as they can so they could start their work on the San Alejo HOV lanes on I-5 and concurrently the San Alejo double track. So those are the 2 drivers for this particular year that drove that number down from 100% down to about 90% after you throw in the contingency. So I know that table 1 is sometimes people like to talk about that, and it can be a complex subject. But are there any Any questions about anything in the capital program or how we're cash flowing our money?
The I-5, we learned a few weeks ago that the cost is going up by 380 million. So now they're trying to do some value engineering to reduce it from that number.
Yes, but the value engineering I was referring to was the value engineering over the part of I-5 that was under construction. One of the reasons it took a little bit longer to get out to the field to break ground is because we were negotiating cost savings with the contractor.
So best case scenario, what would be the 200 million, 300, or what?
It's the problem with value engineering some of these transportation projects. It's not like you were building a high-rise and you could say I could reduce the cost of a finish or I could have a little bit cheaper carpet or things like that. It's concrete, steel, and dirt. And so there's not that much opportunity. But an example of an opportunity that we do take advantage of, you have to keep traffic flowing on I-5. So therefore, Caltrans and Sandag, we work together, we develop work windows of when you can work. Working with one of the benefits of having a contractor on board, you can work with them on creative ways to build this where they can get maybe a longer work window. You get a longer work window, you can reduce the price. That's an example of value engineering.
I'm glad you're doing that. So.
If you need more dirt, we can help you. Like the newspaper's got an unlimited supply, you know. Okay.
Well, now I'd like to
Jim.
turn it back to Andre to wrap it up.
Just a
Okay,
couple.
go ahead, Andre.
Just a couple extra things, and one of the things that we want to highlight, we actually set up the Section 115 trust last year for stabilization of our pension funds. We put in an additional first deposit of $3.5 million. That will put in an additional $1 million per year over the next 15 years, and the actuarial study showed that we'd actually save approximately $29 million in our pension savings going forward. And also, I just took a look at the statement for the first quarter. It returned 2.25%, annualized 9%, so actually off to a really good start. And then lastly, just want to take a look at our contingency balances. We have healthy balances as of June 30th in each of the programs. For the OWP, we're at $8 million, which is at 17% of our budget. For board policy, we're supposed to be 10%, so we're above that. For regional operations, there's several components in there, and we have a balance of $10.2 million, or 16% of the budget. And as Jim just mentioned, we have 8.2% on our capital program with $157 million. So that concludes our report. Be glad to take any other further questions.
Thank you. You know, one of the things, and I want to compliment staff, they make this sound so simple. And there are so many things going on. Jim referred to the opening of the bus station. That was 100% built by other contractors. And I tell you, you can't imagine how much staff time has gone into that, because there were issues that developed that had to be settled in numerous meetings and long negotiations over something that seems like it's dirt simple. The mid-coastline is another, I thought a full funding agreement meant a full funding agreement. Okay, what we learned this year, that meant less than half of full funding.
A fixed funding agreement.
You know, but in spite of that, and we're working with Senator Feinstein and others to get that resolved, but each one of these things has a story of its own. Poor Terry has to sit through all of this too and absorb it, but the staff does an enormous amount of work to make these things happen. It doesn't show in our projections and other things. Things never always go right, okay?
Especially when you're building something.
Emphasis on never, and there's always that little thing. Every time my wife asks me to do a little job at the house, it's going to take 10 minutes. It never takes 10 minutes, and that's the same thing what they're going through. Thank you.
Good question. The pension, what is our funded percentage now? 70%?
We're in the high 60s, I believe it's about
High
68%.
We had a workshop with the actuary in Escondido for 3 hours, and he clearly stated that you have to be 100% funded. So the unfunded liability is something that we are going to take care of with Section 115. We adopted section 115, and I think 5 or 6 cities in San Diego. So yeah, we are on the right track, but to be 69 or 68% funded, it's not good enough. You have to work towards 100%.
Yeah. Okay, thank you all. There's no action. Robin is going to give us a legislative status report very quickly. With the highlights,
Good morning. So
lowlights.
the state legislature is still in recess, so no developments there. But we did just want to take a chance, since we had a few minutes with you today, to run through a matrix that was included in your legislative status reports, page 103 on your iPads. This gives you a rundown of all of the provisions in AB 805 compared to how we currently do some of these things under current practice. Julie's going to be getting into a lot of this at your board policy meeting, but since we have the time, we just wanted to highlight some of the items that we haven't previously discussed. So if you're looking at the chart in the Board of Directors section, these are some new responsibilities or ways that we would operate when it comes to the Board of Directors. I'll highlight the third from the top. The Board of Directors is going to be required to develop some internal control guidelines. Right now, our agency uses, typical standard accounting guidelines that the state produces and other organizations produces. We just require that the board actually develop a formal guideline and adopt those. Similarly, the board is going to be required to develop and adopt an administration policy that requires an evaluation process for staff employees. Again, that's something that we already do internally, but this will just have the board be more involved in that process. There's also a couple new annual reporting requirements. One for the board to provide an annual report to the legislature. This would be a report that the Transportation Committee would develop related to transit, and then we would submit to the legislature once a year. And the next one, this is similar to something that the county taxpayers had recommended, that all board members will now be required to make an annual report to your member agencies related to SANDAG activities for the prior year. Moving on to the next page, we've talked a lot about the voting system changes. One thing we did just want to highlight, based on our reading of the statute, this is the first line on the second page under voting system. Now that the city and the county will be required to split equally your weighted votes, it appears that when one representative is absent, you'll no longer be able to consolidate your votes with the remaining representatives. Meaning, right now you have an A and a B for the city and for the county, and when A's not there or B's not there, the remaining person has the 40 or the 16 under weighted votes. Now you would only have the half. And so under the current system, the city would have 21 votes for the weighted votes, and the county would have 7.5 under weighted votes. We will get into the auditing at the board policy meeting, just highlighting that the port will now be a voting member on the Transportation Committee instead of just an advisory member as they currently are. And then the next page at the bottom, the regional plan, there are some changes to requirements related to our regional comprehensive plan. This is included within your regional transportation plan that you're working on right now. There's going to be some additional analysis related to disadvantaged communities. So we currently do social equity analysis in our regional comprehensive plan. And this just requires that we do additional analysis related to disadvantaged communities as defined by the state. And as you may know, the tool that the state is using right now to define those communities is Cal EnviroScreen. It's going to require that we now include strategies that specifically provide for mode shift to public transportation. So right now we do include a variety of strategies without prioritizing a particular mode. Now we're going to have to make sure that we focus on public transportation when we're working on our regional plan. And lastly, there's a few components like water supply, air quality, solid waste, things like that, that were currently in our requirements to be included in our regional plan at a future date. And these are now just required as optional components starting now. And the last page is just regarding changes to our contracting provisions, and we've talked a lot about all of that as well as related to the skilled and trained workforce, and Julie will get into that at your next meeting as well. So just a little teaser for you. If you have any questions, we can try to answer those now, and Julie's here as well.
Okay. I wanted to press for public comment. I'll let Catherine Rhodes go first.
Hi, Catherine Rhodes from Point Loma, and when I saw this for the AB 805, San Diego is going to have 42% from the existing 40% cap, and then the 50% max cap. That's pretty new. So the only thing that really changed for San Diego is it got 2 percentage points up, and the county got 1 percentage down, and I think Escondido got 1 percentage down. Otherwise, nobody else's percentages have actually changed. for me, last year and the year before, I talked about the airport revenues, and staff was going to come back to tell you exactly what can we use the airport revenues for transportation projects, because we're a grandfathered airport. Zandag staff has a different understanding of it than regional airport staff. And so, of course, what I think you guys should do is actually bring my issue to the State Lands Commission and, the State Attorney General or whoever is in charge of that. And they can tell you that you could use all this money, billions of dollars in airport revenue, can be used for transportation projects like it is in New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Chicago, San Francisco, Denver. They all created their transportation projects using that. And then what's great is that the transportation committee is adding the port, which is great because port and airport are part of transportation, Department of Transportation. But still, nobody is taking responsibility for hazardous pipelines. And then also, there's still no funding for the missing intermodal terminal center to the trolley, to the intermodal terminal center, and the trolley to the airport. And currently, there's still only 1% transit to the airport. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any questions? Robin, thank you. I know you'll be back. That concludes all of the items on our agenda. Let me call your attention to the very last thing there that suggests that the meeting schedule for December has changed. As the holidays, things have been moved up. So the next meeting is going to be on Friday, December 1st, first Friday of the month.
9 a.m.
At 9 a.m. Yeah, it'll be very light then. Mark that down. So we
As long as
want
it's
to
not
see
8,
you.
we don't have to deal with traffic.
Okay? With that, we can adjourn this meeting. Thank you.